Hello everyone, I'm Dominic. I work as a full stack developer at a web development agency. Welcome to my talk about using SendGrid to power a contact form. The code presented here is in JavaScript on some of the slides, but SendGrid maintains official libraries for many languages, including Ruby and Python. So hopefully most of you will not be disappointed. Before writing any code, the first step is to get set up on SendGrid. There is a free plan to get you started, and you only need to upgrade if you hit limits. SendGrid requires two-factor authentication, so be prepared to set that up. I've typically found when creating an account that it lets you go through the first time, and when you log in again, it won't let you do anything until you set that up. So that's worth bearing in mind. To prevent misuse of the email API, you have to verify your sender address. There are two options for this. The simpler one, called single sender verification, is okay for our purposes. Make sure that you store your API key securely. The SendGrid API is designed to be used from a back-end server or serverless function, so you should never expose the key to the client. Now to look at some code. This is the message object that is sent to the API. And you should be able to see a set of properties inside the object. We will go over these one by one. The to property should be the email on which you want to receive form submissions. This would typically be your own email address. You may set up a special one to receive submissions from your form, or you may decide simply to have them come through to your normal email address. Whatever you decide, you can set that as the to property. The from property must be the email that you have verified using the sender verification that I mentioned on the previous slide in SendGrid. They can be the same if desired, but SendGrid will not allow the email to go through if the from email address is not one that you have verified with SendGrid. The subject property can be any string you want, but I recommend including a dynamic part, such as the name variable that I have included in this example, to prevent submissions being threaded together by some email clients, an issue that I have found with Gmail, and it can be super annoying if all your contact form submissions end up in one long thread in your email inbox, which makes it very difficult to reply individually to them. Then there is the reply to property I have included here, which is completely optional, but it can be very useful to set this to the user's email, that is the user who has submitted through the contact form. This will mean that when the email comes through into your inbox and you click on reply, your reply will go directly to the user who has submitted to your form. This second part I am showing is the part that actually connects to the SendGrid API and sends the request. So you import the SendGrid package and set the API key. The API key should not be hard-coded or committed to a repository, but instead stored in an environment variable file or similar. With the mail client then set up, we can then send our message object from the previous slide to the API. The code that I have shown on these two slides is designed to be in one file, just so you are aware. Once you've built your form on the front end, you want to then make it send the data to the back end that will contain the code that I have just been talking about when the form is submitted. I normally send the data from the form fields as JSON in the request body. And the main thing to make sure is that you send it with the fields matching whatever you were expecting to receive when you wrote your backend code. Once your form is connected to SendGrid via a backend server or serverless function, it is then ready to start receiving messages. If you want to add more email functionality to your projects than just powering a contact form, you can certainly do that with SendGrid, but there are a couple of things to bear in mind. If you are going to send email to people other than yourself or your company, you should use domain verification instead of single sender verification, and take care to make sure that your site doesn't get exploited by spammers, because spammers can and will try to use your site's endpoints to send spam if you let them. You want to make sure that any functionality that sends email to other people is protected by some kind of authentication and/or robot protection, and/or that emails are not sent to people without them opting in. In many jurisdictions, especially for commercial or automated mail, there may also be regulatory requirements to follow. Most of this doesn't really apply if you are just sending email to yourself, as with the contact form example that is the main point of this talk. But if you are going to go further, you want to bear these things in mind. And perhaps more than anything, make sure you don't annoy people. Finally, here are some useful links for getting started with SendGrid and the SendGrid API. I'll leave this up for a minute or so you can make a note of them. And I'm happy to supply the slides afterwards if anyone wants, so you can keep them for reference. Thank you for listening to my talk.